An overland trip to Australia and beyond, featuring the once famous Hippy Trail. My adventure started in August 1973, and unlike the many on the numerous overland buses who had the comfort and security of a driver and travel companions, I usually travelled alone. That wasn't the plan, it just worked out that way. Those born in the 50s were called baby boomers. In England, that generation grew up seeing the remains of World War II bomb damage. They also grew up in a time of free education, including to university level, free health services, and a healthy economy where jobs were just there for the taking. There was an air of confidence where people felt they could follow their dreams. For some, that dream was to travel. Apart from in American politics, we boomers seem to be a spent force, but we still have our personal and group achievements and some glorious memories. This journey was made long before the age of the internet, and most of my travel information was gained from a 20-page typed document sold by BIT, British International Traveller, for £1. BIT was a forerunner of Lonely Planet. My budget was £300 and expected travel period to Australia was 6 months. I utilised local transport, usually buses, all arranged town by town along the route. People were attracted to the trip for many reasons. For some, it was an interesting way to get to Australia. For some, it was the start of a world trip. Some were seeking enlightenment, and some just wanted easy access to drugs. You saw lots of those, especially either side of Afghanistan, depending on whether they started from Europe or Australia. Some were still stoned days later. Sadly, many of those never completed the journey or even returned home. I left my home in Lancashire by train and travelled to London. From London's Victoria Station, I took the boat train to Paris Gare du Nord. From Paris, My overland trip would start in earnest on the Direct Orient Express leaving from Garda Est station. On the route to Istanbul, the train would pass through many cities and countries. The route Dijon, France, Lausanne, Switzerland, Milan, Venice, Trieste, Italy, Zagreb, Belgrade, Yugoslavia, Sofia, Bulgaria, to Istanbul, Turkey. Often in conversations, the glory of Venice is discussed. I like to liven the discussion by saying I was there, but I wasn't impressed. I say that with total sincerity, because after being on the train for many hours, just as the train was crossing into Venice, I fell into a deep sleep. I didn't wake up until the train was on some kind of causeway leaving the place. I left Istanbul by bus and travelled through towns on Turkey's southern coast. I took a bus from Erzurum across the Iranian border to Tabriz and finally to Tehran, which under the Shah's rule seemed to be a fairly modern and attractive city. The border crossing featured a huge car park of dusty and rusty vehicles that had arrived there without the correct paperwork, never to leave. I left Isfahan and travelled south into the Dasht Ilut desert, passing through the towns of Kerman, Bam and Zaydan. At night the bus stopped in the desert to change a tyre. The sky was unbelievable, so many stars. I crossed the border into Pakistan and the bus stopped for refreshments at the baking mud-built town of Nukundi, where temperatures of 150 Fahrenheit, 65 centigrade are daily occurrences. You know it's dry when 100 flies totally cover a little spilt soft drink. The border from Pakistan to India is located midway between Lahore and the Sikh holy city of Amritsar. The customs officials there were keen to rob people. They would go through your belongings, carefully steal something, then hurry you out of the building, pretending you were going to miss the last bus. There was a sign saying, "If you pass this, you cannot complain about the officials." They made good use of the sign. Of course there was no bus. From Amritsar, I took a bus on the avalanche-prone, so often deadly, route through the western Himalayas to Srinagar. Srinagar is a water city in the Indian part of the split state of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan controls the other part. They often fight over this territory. Leaving Srinagar, a bus took me back down to the Indian plains before rising again to Dharamshala, then still higher to the former British Raj summer retreat of MacLeod Ganj. When I was there were still many of the British Raj buildings. From Delhi, I boarded the Howrah Express, travelling the cheapest way, third class unreserved, with an eventual destination of Calcutta. Including a student discount, I paid £1 for the whole trip. The Indian system meant that to buy your ticket, you had to attend several different windows and queue in several different queues. The train was a very crowded, hot, interesting but challenging travel experience. The train route: New Delhi, Agra, Varanasi, Calcutta. Whilst in the Taj Mahal, I had a guide. It was almost impossible not to have one. In the basement, he said with some disgust that the British had looted the nation of its wealth, but in return had presented India with the brass lantern that was hanging there. I got the impression he wasn't impressed by the deal. The British have a different view. To them, the building had become derelict, so they restored it. On completion of the restorations, they donated the lamp. In 1973, Burma was closed to travellers, so there was no alternative. I flew from Calcutta to Bangkok, Thailand, my only flight of the trip. At the Calcutta airport, I came across another blatant example of Indian corruption. The guy at the check-in desk said, "I don't care if you have a ticket. Unless you pay me $10 US, you aren't getting onto the plane." And he meant it. That's the equivalent of $100 US in 2025 money. I departed southern Thailand by train and stopped at Butterworth, Malaysia, before travelling on to Penang Island by ferry. At the time, armed Muslim separatists were still active in southern Thailand, but fortunately I saw no sign of them. I had left UK, a typical beer-drinking young man. My bunny belt was a good fit around my waist. After about 3 months of very careful budgeting and Asian food, that money belt was now in danger of slipping past my hips. I had zero body fat. I could still easily lift my backpack, but I must have looked terrible. In Singapore, one chubby businessman, feeling sorry for me, offered me a meal and also tried to carry my backpack, without success. I had been through a fairly tough time, but unlike many who travelled, I had never once asked my family for money. On 29th November 1973, after a little over 3 months' travel, our boat was anchored off Fremantle. I had arrived safely and still had almost £50 left. Officially, to get in Australia, you needed to be able to show a minimum of £25. A representative from Westpac Bank boarded and offered advice and his business card to travellers. I landed with almost no formality, passed immigration, and was given an initial 90-day visa, then took the train to Perth. With friends from the boat, we tracked down the bank rep, and unbelievably, an hour later we had a place to live and several job interviews arranged. After a pleasant few weeks living and working in Perth, I applied for and got a job on the West Australian goldfields. January 27th, 1974, I set off on the train called the Prospector and headed 600 kilometres inland to the historic mining town of Kalgoorlie. My new home would be the Durkin Road single men's quarters of the almost new mining town of Kambalda. In the desert, 60 kilometres south of Kalgoorlie. In July 74, after a few months at Kambalda, I saw a new job that looked interesting. I returned to Perth for an interview and within days was on the move again, this time to the fascinating destination of Papua New Guinea. It took many flights, but eventually I was collecting my backpack at the airstrip on the tropical Bougainville Island. After 39 months in my beachside hut, it was time to start travelling again. I commenced with the Solomon Islands, then after a few weeks in Brisbane, set off for Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, South America. If interested in my further travels, see my many other YouTubes from 50 years ago to the present day. Please like and subscribe. Bob Jackson.